Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday and welcome to Trek on Tuesday. We're so glad to have you here today. My name is Aaron, and this is not the first time that we've had a guest on the show who was way smarter than me, but this might be, maybe the biggest disparity we've had. Helena, how are you doing, ma'am?
I am doing great. I am so excited to be here today, Aaron. Thank you
We
for having me.
we are so excited to have you. It's so nice to meet you. Helena Cristobal is let me go through this list, a hardware designer, EV charging expert, STEM advocate. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Her official title is I can't even say it, senior electrical engineer at a company called Atom Power. She basically specializes in, correct me if I'm wrong, charging electric vehicles. Is that kind of the simple version of your job description, Helena?
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I'm an electrical engineer, which means what I do is I do the designs that allow that charging to happen. The company, our main product is an electric car charger, which is really cool because we have some special features in there that allow us to do fun stuff like programming. Like we have several chargers and you can tell which charger goes first, or we can make sure that not all the chargers are charging all at the same time and you're drawing too much power. So we have some fun stuff going on there.
Very, very cool. By the way, our viewer, Rob, says he's also an electrical engineer. Rob, I've met Rob before, Helena. I'm already going to say Helena's a lot smarter than Rob. I'm just going to say that right now. I want to give a shout out to our friends at Manufacturing USA. Manufacturing USA is an organization that connects people in both public and private sectors around a common goal to empower our country's manufacturing efforts by highlighting innovation endeavors and educational opportunities. I was struck, Helena, when we were approached by Manufacturing USA by their common goals that they have with Scouting America, and that is getting kids involved with STEM. That's a passion of yours, I understand. We're going to talk about that as well. But obviously, science, technology, engineering, and math, an important part of our society today, right? What we were just talking earlier about how much the world has changed. STEM education and job opportunities, never more important than they have been, are right now. Helena has been named by Manufacturing USA as a modern maker. Congratulations, by the way. I don't know exactly what that means, but it's pretty cool. But what it means is Helena, she's got her act together. So let's start our conversation off, everybody. You're passionate about a lot of things. You just kind of gave us an overview of electric vehicle charging in your company, Atom Power. But I want to talk about STEM in general. That's something that you've been passionate about for quite a few years. Is that right?
I think so, yes. I got into engineering when I was in high school. There was a very big push for green energy, right? Like solar panels, wind, all of this wasn't as developed as it is today. So I was very interested in that and also on electric cars. And I wanted to invent the infinite battery for the electric car. That's what I was going for when I went into engineering, right? Now, that's a little different. You kind of need to know chemistry for that. And I ended up liking the electrical side of things a little better. So now I'm on the charging part of that battery, which is also essential to make those electric cars work and to make it convenient also for everybody to have an electric car. So yes, I've always been interested in STEM in different aspects, but life takes you places.
Yes, it does. It took you from, I think you said Spain, into the
Yes.
United States. You're now based out of North Carolina. And eventually it drew you to Manufacturing USA. Can you talk about that process a little bit? I think you said that someone from your company said and thought you'd be great for this.
Yes, so my company is part of Power America, which is another organization that also specializes in like semiconductor and pushing that technology further. And somebody from Power America called me up one day and said, like, hey, there's this really cool initiative, we want to promote STEM, we want to give visibility to different roles, and we would love to have you. And I was like, sign me up. And they signed me up and we did a profile, and that's how we got in touch also with you guys.
That's great. Yes. And behind the scenes, Gina today, shout out to her. She's running things behind the scenes. She's going to throw up a link here in a bit where you can read more about Helena. You can read more about Manufacturing USA. Thank you, Gina. And more about the Modern Makers Initiative. We recently featured a different modern maker on the Aaron on Scouting blog. I encourage you to read that story. It was written by our friend Michael Freeman. We are joined today, though, by Helena. Electric cars, Helena, have been a thing for a while in various forms. I remember, so folks watching, I might be a little bit older than Helena. We're not going to get into that. It doesn't matter. But when I was a kid, I remember electrical cars kind of coming to be a thing, right? And it was just sort of probably much like you remember. Wow, how cool would that be to have a car that, didn't require little, if at all, gas? Talk about that industry in general and how it's changed and where we're at now when it comes to electric vehicles and batteries specifically.
So one fact that you may or may not know is electric cars were very popular in the early 1900s.
Okay, I did not know that. Very
Yes,
interesting.
they were
Okay.
very popular. They were marketed towards like urban cities, right? Because the rural areas didn't have like electricity at the time.
Okay.
And they were very popular. It was eventually when Henry Ford and the streamline manufacturing came along that they kind of took a pause, right? Because they're coming back. But so yes, they are not that new. The technology has changed enough to where now they are viable, right? And when I was in high school, the big drawback was the range, the battery.
Right.
But now that is pretty solved as well. And now the main problem is the charging part, right? The main complaint that you hear is that it's difficult to find a charger that works, then maybe they're not as up to date. And that's what we're trying to solve at Atom Power as well. Our chargers have a very, very high uptime. So they are pretty much always working, which is one of the advantages that we have. And where I think this is going, I think charging infrastructure is going to be more and more reliable. It's going to be more and more available. And I think there's other technologies that need to come together to make it work as well. I think there's a very good relationship, for example, between having like solar panels and charging linked together so they can work together. There's also a big effort that needs to come from the actual electric lines that bring the power everywhere. And there's a lot of people working on this. So I'm a firm believer that this will be very much a reality if it isn't now, more than it is now in the next few years.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I do think that maybe the biggest obstacle to electric vehicles for most folks is the fear that the battery's going to die and they're going to be stranded, right? So you think is that an unreasonable fear? Are we beyond that? Do you think?
I think the range anxiety, which is what you're describing, it's it's in our minds at this point. I mean, how long do you go with a tank of gas? It's 350 miles, maybe, my car. Roughly, there's batteries that last that long already. I think the reasonable fear right now, which makes sense, is the availability of the charge for longer trips. On a day-to-day basis, we don't need a full tank of gas a day, right? You don't need 350 miles. Hopefully, most people don't.
Right.
That's
a long commute, but yes, right.
For a long-range trip, that's where right now we're all working towards improving the scenario and making, a more reliable network of chargers and making apps that reflect the actual status of the chargers. And maybe even in the future, we will know how many people are waiting to charge your car,
Okay. All right. Interesting. Yeah. Cool. Shout out to DJ who's watching. DJ's actually right down the road from us. Good to see you, sir. Wendy's coming from Elgin, Illinois. Good to see you. And Rusty's watching in New Philadelphia, Ohio. Thank you all for tuning in. We're talking to Helena Cristobal. She is a Manufacturing USA Modern Makers. That means she's a big deal. We're very excited to have her on. Her expertise is in electric vehicle charging. She's a senior electrical engineer at Atom Power. I want to ask you a little bit, Helena, about you mentioned something. This is something you became interested in. What do you think, around high school age or something along those lines? What is it about this industry that excites you? Why does this mean so much to you?
Well, I grew up in Madrid, and Madrid is a big city. And as every big city, there is challenges with air quality, right? Not only Madrid, but everywhere. So it's something I've heard about a lot, the air quality. And moving to electric vehicles helps the air quality in the cities a lot. So there's one is for that. The other one is just taking care of the environment, right? The emissions that a gas car produces are not very good at different levels. There's different levels of pollution. One is the locally in the city, but then also, it is warming up the planet, right? So
Yep.
I always wanted to, I like nature. I want to keep it nice and clean, and for us to be able to continue living in this planet.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's something else that you have in common with us at Scouting America. Conservation is built into all of our programs, from Cub Scouts all the way up to the oldest programs, Helena, Boy Scouts, or Scouts BSA as it's known now. Conservation is a part of that. That can be anything from picking up trash to studying different ways that we can, responsibly coexist with the world that we live in today. Quick shout out to Jennifer, who's watching from Madison, Georgia. Good to see you, Jennifer. I'm glad you're here. Another thing that you have in common with us is this focus on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. Built into the Cub Scout program. Helena, the Cub Scout program just recently got updated just in the last year or so. It's been kind of a big deal around here. We spend a lot of time talking about that. And science, technology, engineering, and math is now built into that program in more than it ever has been. I know that you're passionate about kids getting involved in STEM, right? Why does that mean so much to you?
Well, I think I'm very fortunate. My family has always supported me. I've always had a lot of exposure to, STEM in general, science, technology access. And I feel like there are some kids that might be interested and they don't even know that it exists, and that's a possibility for everyone really to go and make an impact and it doesn't have to be electric cars, right? It can be any field, right? So I think it's important to let people know that we're here, that we exist, and that you can have that opportunity to, if you like it, if you're curious, if there's something out there that you want to learn, develop, discover, that there's options for that, and there's different ways to get there. For me, it was engineering, right? But when I was in high school, I thought I was going to do chemical, and I ended up in electrical engineering. So
yeah, well, you never know where it's going to take you. I used to want to be a veterinarian. Look how that turned out. Shout out to Wilfredo, who's watching from the Philippines. Nice. Thank you for joining us, Wilfredo. Appreciate that very much. One of the cool things about electrical vehicles and the whole purpose, it really does sort of, I think we can all agree, regardless of our political affiliation, it would be a good idea to not pollute the world too much, right? That seems like something we can all agree on. So electrical vehicles definitely is aligned with that. What kind of advice can you give, Helena, maybe to, we have some parents watching maybe right now who have kids in, middle school, high school, who may have expressed some interest in STEM or STEM related fields. What kind of advice can you give to those families about what those kids can be doing, as students now?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the number one advice is, if they're curious about something, if you are curious about something, go look it up. We are in the age of information. You can get on the internet, find, maybe there's a program near you that is running something interesting. Maybe there's a robotics team in your high school, or maybe there's someone like me near you that you can come up and ask questions to, right? Like, don't be shy. Ask questions, be curious, and for parents, encourage that curiosity and just see what it takes everybody, right? So yeah. I think that's the main thing. Encourage curiosity and know that there are resources, right? You guys are here. Manufacturing USA is here. There's a lot of information and a lot of initiatives going on that will give you a little insight, right? Give you a different perspective, and then maybe you become a veterinarian or an engineer or a scientist.
Yeah, you never know where it's going to take you. Let's talk about a typical day in the life of an electrical vehicle expert. What is your, the actual nuts and bolts of your job like, Helena?
It depends on the week.
Okay.
But the fun thing about engineering is that it's always different. Maybe your whole month is the same, but then in your year, it's going to be different. But I have an office job, right? So I do a lot of design on both on paper and on like software online. And I think one of the coolest thing about electrical engineering is that you start with a drawing, a symbolic drawing in a paper, and then you gotta make your way all the to this, right? And there's this is a PCB, a printed circuit board. So basically there are circuits printed in here,
Obviously, yeah, right.
right? And doesn't have the components on it, but then the components go
Of
here.
course. Okay.
And then to go from your paper design to this, to a lab where you have your instruments and you test it and then it works or it doesn't, is probably the most exciting part of my job. So I will have probably some time designing on paper, computer, sometime waiting for this to be manufactured and shipped to me, and then sometime after that, testing this in a lab with all kinds of instruments and just making changes and figuring out problems. And eventually, when everything works, then you can make it into a product and make hundreds, thousands, millions of these.
Right. Right. Very, very interesting. Very, very cool. And that's also interesting to hear you explain that the process. It goes from an idea, right, that you sketch on a piece of paper. Gosh, how many world-changing ideas started with someone just writing it down on a piece of paper, or even before in the olden times. Exactly, yeah. And you know, again, that reminds me, I don't know how familiar you are with this thing called the Pinewood Derby, Helena, but there's this Cub Scout activity called Pinewood Derby where kids carve Pinewood Derby cars with their families, and a lot of the coolest, fanciest looking Pinewood Derby cars start with a design on a piece of paper. That just kind of stuck out to me there. So again, another example of how here at Cub Scouts and Scouting America, we're encouraging kids to, you know, flex those STEM muscles a little bit with their families and things like that. You never know what they might be into. Helena, I also understand that you are a swimmer.
I do swim.
Is that you swim competitively just for fun to stay in shape? What's up with the swimming?
I used to swim competitively when I was in high school. And then during college, I was a swimming referee.
Oh,
so
nice.
I would go to the competitions in the weekend and like take times or like give the exit, just gather the crowds. That was a very fun time. Today is just mostly to be fit, relax. I really like the feeling of being in the pool and that the water kind of like drowns out all of the sounds and there's just that rhythm that you're swimming at. So today is just fitness. But back in the day, I both worked on it and competed.
Understood. Yes, swimming definitely a part of the scouting program, Helena, at all different ages, in all kinds of environments. I don't suppose you ever swim. You probably do most of your swimming in pools. I don't suppose you ever go lakes, oceans, anything like that.
I lived in Chicago, but it was a little cold to swim in the lake over
Ooh,
there.
that seems like, yeah. I have visited there before in the winter, and I would not get in the lake there. Maybe during the summer, I don't know. But anyway, very, very cool. Helena, what would you say when it comes to your job? What's the hardest part about it?
That's a very hard question. I think the initial stage where you are drafting out possible solutions can be the more frustrating part because it takes some time to get it to a point where you get something that works and meets what you're trying to design. I think, and that's also the part where you got to do the most math. So I think that's probably the hardest part of the job is the beginning of the design cycle.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, and I'm just guessing. Correct me if I'm wrong. There are some ideas that never come to fruition. I mean, that's just a part of the deal. Am I wrong on that?
No, that's correct. Sometimes you work on a project or on something for like, a few months, and then maybe it's not doable, or maybe there's a different priority, and then you gotta bench that idea and hope that you can come back to it later. And that's sad, but usually you pick up a different challenge right away, so you forget about it pretty quick.
I, as a writer, have had many, many story ideas that my bosses didn't like, Helena, just so you know, and I have to start over, and that is equally heartbreaking. Just let me tell you about that. I would love to talk a little bit more, Helena, if I could, about early in your career. I'm just guessing, again, tell me if I'm wrong, when you were just out of college, when you first came to the United States, the job that you have now is not the job that you had then. So tell me about that process and what that was like.
So I came to the US to study my master's degree in electrical engineering. And then when I graduated, I was looking for a job. That first job search is pretty hard. But then I landed this job and I was super, super lucky. I landed this job at the company, it's called Borg Warner. And I was working with the team that designed the original EV1 back in like the 1990s. The EV1 was the first mass-produced EV vehicle, electric car
Okay.
in the US, produced by GM, General Motors. And it was only out for production for like maybe 3 years or something like that. That was super exciting that I joined this company where there was so much experience, where the team I was working with was like the people that were working back in the 90s when I was like a toddler, right? They were already designing electric cars. So I joined as a new grad. I didn't know much at the time. I learned a lot on the job, and everybody was always very helpful, very nice, even when you obviously made mistakes, because it was, you make mistakes. I make mistakes now too.
Yep.
Back then, where they were a little different, but it
Absolutely.
was super, super exciting.
Well, that's part of the deal, right? If you're going to be creative, if you're going to come up with different ideas, if you're going to try to change the world, hey, there might be a mistake or two along the way. That's why you have coworkers and a team that you're working with, I think, right?
Yeah.
Great lessons to be learned there, I think. We have just a couple of more minutes with Helena Cristobal. I want to give another shout out to our friends at Manufacturing USA. So nice of you guys to introduce us to Helena. We're happy to have us. Helena, Manufacturing USA named Helena one of their modern makers. You can read more about that program at that link right there. You'll see, I've got the link in front of me right there. There are some other very interesting folks who were also named Modern Maker. Being a modern maker means that Helena has been recognized for her work and not only her accomplishments, but also her work in promoting STEM and promoting her industry and things like that, which is very, very cool. College, Helena, I'm just guessing. We talked about this a little bit, but it's a lot of math. It's a lot of science. It's a lot of numbers. Am I right about that? That's where
It
I
is
went
very
wrong.
exciting too.
See,
It's
that's
a
where I
lot of
went wrong.
math.
I couldn't do that. But go ahead. Go ahead.
It's a lot of math, but then, you need that math to understand what's behind it. And then once you're on the job, there's math, but maybe not that much. I don't think I've done an
Okay.
integral a long time, So it's a hard degree, but I think it's worth it. I think the outcome and the prospective jobs that you can get are gonna be there. ChatGPT still doesn't really make math, so I think we're gonna be here for a little longer. And I think also you can do very cool stuff with an engineering degree of any type, right? I like electric vehicles. I have friends working in electric aircraft, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have
Mm-hmm.
friends working in chemistry stuff, plastics, all kinds of different applications. So, and we were friends in college. So you
Mm-hmm.
make good friends.
Mm-hmm.
They help you along the way. You help them along the way, and you make fun out of like a hardcore degree, which it's fine. It's hard, but
Yep.
you can get through it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my son Helena is just about to graduate from high school, and his question that he always asks is, "Why do I have to know all this stuff?" But I think what you're doing is you're sort of flexing those muscles, right? You're exercising the type of muscles that you'll need when you eventually find a career. What are your thoughts, Helena?
Yeah. You learn a baseline, right? You learn the basics, you learn the concepts, you learn also to develop a sort of intuition that then helps you solve those problems that may be similar to what you did in college, but now you have other tools to work with when you are in an industry than when you are in college. So I think do you need to know everything by heart? Probably not,
Right.
but you need to learn the basic concepts so that you can build on top of that.
Awesome. Awesome. Very, very cool. This has been a fascinating conversation, Helena. I can't say it enough time. Once again, thanks to our friends at Manufacturing USA for hooking us up. And congratulations to being named a modern maker, Helena. That's great. You can read more at the website that we've put in the chat and that we've been throwing up on the screen. Before we let you go, Helena, any final advice that you can give to scouts or scout-aged kids? We're talking about early teenagers or teenagers who are interested in becoming engineers. Any final words of wisdom you can share based on your experience?
Ask your parents before tearing up any piece of thing that you have at home. Ask for permission. But
Yeah,
then after that, do it.
because they want to tinker, right? They want to get involved and use their hands and do things, right?
Yeah, but yeah, I also wanted to thank Manufacturing USA and the Modern Makers Initiative. they are who got us in touch. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it. And thank you guys for having me in the program. This is like super exciting for me to be able to share my experience and hopefully inspire some younger generations.
Definitely, definitely. I hope so too. It's been an honor to meet you, Helena. Thanks so much for joining us. Thank you all for watching at home. We appreciate it. We'll be back with a future episode of Trek on Tuesday. Until next time, thank you, Helena. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
So long, everybody.